Hey, what's going on? This your boy KLA, Cloud of Wanderer, and I have a special guest. His name is Jeffrey Snow from Snowstorm Comics, and he's here to tell how he started his entity, Snowstorm Comics. Yeah, it's very interesting. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm okay, day by day.
Understand that the eventual grind, as always. I get you there.
Yeah.
So,
You have
hmm?
No, I was about to say you have like this voice that you could do radio or something like that.
Yeah, I've received that compliment a couple of times. It's been interesting because I have a friend of mine who's a professional singer, and I was telling her like they say I should try singing, but when I tried to do singing, like take a singing class, they diagnosed me as a baritone, and I was like,
Right.
no, that doesn't sound right. Baritone is a bit higher on my register. So we went to karaoke in New York, and I
Mm,
tried singing Luther Vandross, Here and Now.
right.
And when we got finished, she was just like, "Oh no, you are a true bass. You sung that a octave lower than Luther Vandross himself." So she was just like, where is reason why it runs that way is because true bass is supposedly very rare. So
Right.
usually, if you are a lower tone, they were just like, "Oh no, he's probably a baritone. He just may be a bass." But she was like, "No, you actually are a true bass." And so because of that, singing lessons you had to get like the right instructor because there's not
Right.
many singing classes for that range per se. So I was like, good to
Right.
know. Good to know. So those out there who are true bass, figure it out. Make sure you make
Yeah.
sure you take a double check because you could be a true bass and they just think you're a baritone. So
Yeah, that's cool. Did you eventually did do singing classes or
oh, no, this was actually just last week when I
oh,
was when I
okay.
was out at New York Comic Con. So I'm
Oh,
actually
okay.
yeah, I'm actually waiting for her. Was it yeah last week? Yeah, it was last week. So I was just waiting for her to like send me some recommendations of individuals who are in the base area because again I could probably choose the wrong one. They'd be like, no, actually you're a baritone, something that I had to do all over again. So I'm just waiting. So I just want to make sure that when I do attempt to give it a shot, I have the
Right.
right instructor to put me down the right path. You know what I mean?
Right. So
Yeah.
was this your first time being in on New York Comic Con or you been there before?
Oh yes, that was my first time in New York Comic Con.
Oh,
My first time in New York, to be fair.
okay.
For those who are unaware, I live in California and I've lived here for most of my life. So
Mm.
how this came to be is we just debuted our comic book company this year, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's been in behind the scenes for a while, but in terms of getting official and starting selling our products and stuff like that, we actually just started this year.
Wow.
So our first convention was WonderCon, which is in Anaheim, which is about I want to say maybe like an hour 15 minutes away, so it's not that far.
Right.
It is usually considered like the best convention for having a decent amount of people while learning on the fly. And it was exactly that. There was so much we were able to grasp from like people around selling their content while still having decent sellings. And so
Mm.
from there, I wanted, of course, to go into San Diego Comic Con, but San Diego Comic Con is always incredibly difficult to get into. So instead of
Okay.
put yeah, instead of putting my eggs into that basket, I instead uh, also submitted for New York Comic Con, which I knew was like the San Diego Comic Con for the East Coast,
Mm.
and we got approved. And so I was like, wow, okay, I'm going to New York for the first time. I'm going to New York Comic Con for the first time. Let's go big. So, so
Yeah.
we ended up heading out there, and the response was incredible. I was not expecting for us to do as well as we did. So many people were interested. in the comic. We sold out of our standard edition of our Rise of the Nephilim comic, which I definitely didn't expect. So we're going back now for our second printing. And yeah, safe to say we will be going out there in the near future. But
Yeah, that's dope.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the last time I've been to Comic Con was 2012, and I met one of my classmates there. He's a comic book artist.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and he been doing it for like years. And I got like one of the issues that he did like Batgirl Cassandra Cain.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
So he was working for DC. Oh, that's
yeah.
fantastic.
He done Marvel, DC, and stuff. And he even done like work for the Black Eyed Peas. They did like a comic book. I forgot
Oh,
the name. It's
interesting.
called Masters of the Sun. Yeah, yeah,
That is awesome that more musicians are actually getting into the comic book scene. That's really cool.
yeah. I noticed that.
Hmm.
There's a picture of you with a rap legend. Well, not you, but
Yeah, I mean,
DMC.
yes, Run DMC. So the person next to him, he's a fantastic musician who's also a assistant writer slash editor for Snowstorm Comics. Her name is Megan McCauley. She's actually
Okay,
done the music for some of the Marvel movies, such as
okay.
Daredevil, Fantastic Four, such like that.
No.
And she was the one who actually gave me that test drive. Like, let's see if you're a baritone or a true bass. So when I was saying the
Oh,
musician that
okay,
was supposed to help me out, that's her. and
okay,
so. And so, yeah, we actually, while we were at the booth, a good friend of hers named Piercy Melto came by. Who's done interviews for her for a while now, and formed us that Run DMC was actually downstairs actually having their own content. And he has done like photography for Run DMC before, so he was just like, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. Now I had to stay behind and run the booth because, but she actually got the opportunity to be able to go down, talk to her about the comic, exchange details and all that kind of stuff. So it was an incredible experience. He indicated that he loved the comic, loved what it was about. Of course, we got a DMC comic ourselves. So it was
mm,
just incredible. It was incredible to have that opportunity to be able to exchange details and meet a legend like that. Even though I was, I had to be the owner, had to run the booth. I still was,
yeah.
felt like it was a part of that process. So yeah, it was a fantastic time, and we don't treat it lightly. That's for sure.
Oh. So the response was crazy in New York City, huh?
Yes. There was. It was great because of the variety of people that was coming across that was interested from the content. We had fathers and daughters coming by,
Mm,
a couple people, because a lot of times you can come across a comic, and parents need to make sure that the content that they purchase is suitable for the kids that they're with. Some may be 18, some may be 12. So we wanted to make sure, especially with this series, as this was our first series, that we put our age bracket in the area like manga, you know what I mean? Like the Naruto area, the Dragon Ball Z area, like the early preteens type situation, because usually that's old enough to where you can be able to tell a bit more story, but it's still young enough to where parents allow their kids to be able to watch it. Because Naruto gets bloody. I'm just be honest, Naruto gets bloody
mm,
from time to time, but it's still is a great content there. And then we have like ladies will come by, they will see Layla, and they were like, it's fantastic that you have a powerful female warrior there at the front. Because one of our stickers that we almost were done by Saturday. We gave it for free.
right.
Had her with a sword behind her back,
Mm,
and a lot of the ladies were really that, and then many other ladies, and of course POCs, when they saw Nico, they were just like, it's great to see that diversity and representation in there, which we wanted to make sure was very important. And
right.
then the other key areas were individuals who were interested in wanting to get into the comic book industry, see me for the first time and asking, like, you know, you've made it, like, how did you do it? What was your goals for reaching there? And then to be able to pass on experiences that I had starting off and try to provide guidelines for what direction that they wanted to take. It was inspiring, you know, to be able to help people find success, hopefully, in this field of choice. It was just so many things about New York Comic Con I could go for for probably 30 minutes, that just made it such a fantastic experience. But yeah, it was a great time.
Well, so why don't we just go back a little bit, like at what point in your life you decided you wanted to do comics? Like, are you an artist or a writer or anything like that?
Yes, I'm one of those rare individuals that do both. I was always interested in wanting to do comics ever since I was a little kid. I think the oldest memory I have is I remember I had a comic. It was like a 4-piece comic that I think it was like a 7-Eleven, so you could tell like how wild back that was. It had I think it was like Luke Cage and Iron Fist. And it was one of those, you know, world classic comics that I read through it, and I just kept reading through it. It was just incredible. I was like, this is what I wanted to do. I knew right then and there that, like, this is what I wanted to do growing up. But it was, I'll be honest, it was a difficult struggle getting to where I am today. I proudly proclaim myself as the Rock Lee of the comic book world, because there was a lot of battles that I had to get to just to be able to reach this area, from finding the right support, because, you know, oftentimes, you know, you can run into difficulties of people supporting you in your passion, to, you know, I'll be honest to say, I have ADHD, like massive ADHD. Like, I take the second highest dosage for it. And so try to navigate that, especially at that time when I didn't know I had it, was extremely difficult. Like, I would start on a comic book series, maybe go like half of an issue into it, and then I would just get bored and switch over to the next subject, not realizing that I had ADHD at that time frame. So I would constantly keep drawing, but I could never fully finish anything. And then I was surrounded by fantastic artists, who, that's how I actually got my foot into the door, as I started on this a company from a really good friend of mine who helped me get into the industry, named Anthony, who started his own comic book company called Swim Bar Productions. And that's how we actually started doing Comic Con, was via his booth. And he had a great group, we had a great group of friends who were doing different stages in the comic book, in the art industry. Some was like concept art for video games. Actually, I think the majority of them was concept art for video games. But he was specifically a comic book artist that leaned more towards the manga aspect. And so I saw all these different individuals who had, like, you know, full-blown family support of like financial support and everything, going into comics or going into the Art Institute of San Diego. And I had to take the struggle bus. I had to take the log away. I had to join the military to essentially get a Montgomery GI Bill, which then for the Montgomery GI Bill, I tried to go into the Art Institute of San Diego, but by the time I got out, they increased their price by like 50%, so I couldn't even afford to take that Montgomery GI Bill to go to the school that all my friends went to. So I had to end up going to a general college to try to do like IT for one side and then art on the other, which then graduated from that. And then from there, I was trying to do into it, but it was still very difficult because the art classes at the general school was decent, but it wasn't really fantastic. And I didn't know I had ADHD at that time. So I left it, and then I became an engineer. And then when the engineer process came in, because of the amount of money I was able to make, I was able to take that funds and get me into an online college called CGMA, and that's really where things took off. Because I fortunately, one of my friends who was with the company, he was looking through my artwork. He was just like, he could see through the comic that I was getting progressively better at every page, and he was just like, the reason this is the case is because there's a lot of things you may not be familiar with or don't know. So if you go to like a specialized school, especially now with the money that you're currently making, you can finally be able to learn all the foundational content that wasn't provided to you at, say, the general schools that I went to help take it to the next stage. So I went to CGMA, and at the same time I went to CGMA was also around the same time I finally found out I had ADHD. So I mean, it took no more than like 15 minutes with the therapist for them to realize, like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and start him on the doses, like, yeah, for me to get diagnosed. And then those two areas combined, I started learning about Photoshop. I started learning about a portrait painting. I started learning about landscape design, silhouettes, like all the foundational aspects that you don't really realize you need to know until you start taking classes, was finally given to me. And in every class I took, I went deep into it, trying to absorb as much information as I possibly could. And as I done so, you could just see just by the digital art painting alone. And this is one of the stories at the beginning. For the first week 1 to when I submit my assignment at week 8, the teacher was so shocked at the progress that I made that she started crying in the class. Yeah, because I didn't know anything about, I didn't even know what layers were. I had nothing. I knew nothing about Photoshop.
Yeah, I had a rough start in Photoshop too. I did. It took me some time, a little bit, but then eventually, I'm still not an expert, but I was better than I was before.
Because people underestimate how complicated it is.
Yeah.
And then also people throw out this mindset that because all this information is out on the internet, you should be able to just look at YouTube videos and become a professional. And it's just like, no, everyone learns differently. Some people can't just bring up a playlist of tutorial videos on YouTube and absorb everything and be able to, spit out, Leonardo da Vinci content in Photoshop, while others, like myself, need like teachers and guidelines to be able to tell me, oh, this is where you were wrong and this is how you correct to fix it. And that back and forth that's necessary was needed for me to be able to make progress. So one of the big things I will always say for people who are interested in content and wanting to be a professional, especially in the art field, is find out the best way you learn. If you can determine the best way you learn, you have done 50 to 60% of the battle already as is. And because if you need a teacher, okay, I got to go to a school. If you're able to just learn online, then you already know the process. But to just copy and ape what everyone else does isolates the individual and makes them forget that I'm different from other people. What makes me tick? What makes me self-reflect and realize I need to figure out stuff,
Right.
So I did that. And then after I completed the content from CGMA, that's what I was about to start working on my comic book, and then COVID hit. So yes, and so as you can imagine, when COVID came out, I was like, this is the worst time to actually try to release a comic book series because things are looking bad. So this takes a unique turn into because COVID, you had to stay aside, and I'm naturally an extrovert, even though I love drawing. My passion is artwork. I always feed off of interactions and talking with people.
Right.
So I was decided to go on Twitch, and I found out things about like what's called like TTRPGs and D&D. And so I ended up meeting up with like I wanted to like participate and join in some of this content as they were streaming on Twitch because it looked like a lot of fun. And so I ended up meeting like a lot of people that was like large in the industry, which was where Megan McCauley, that's where I actually met her through, was through a Vampire the Masquerade TTRPG Discord. And so we started playing together, and we, like I said, we became really good friends. And I ended up creating like my own Twitch channel where I was meeting up with different individuals in the space, not knowing that these individuals would play a large role in what my comic book company was going to be today. That's where I ended up meeting up with like TJ Storm, who, you know, probably is aware he's the person who does mocap for the Predator, Godzilla. What else? He did quite a bit of stuff. I even met up to Deborah Ann Wool. I was able to play with her. You know, she's on Daredevil. All Daredevil, True Blood, all that kind of stuff. And she's a major D&D fan. So it was just like putting myself in that space. I had no idea that I was going to be putting myself into an area that will essentially help put me on the path where I'm at today. So I talked with those individuals. We had great times on Twitch, but because that content was so time consuming, I knew I would have to start taking a step back, because I couldn't do both at the same time. So I ended up reaching out to some of the people that were in the field and asked them, hey, would you like to either do freelance or, you know, work for Snowstorm Comics? And many of them were interested, because TTRPGs, you're often writing content for your shows or changing rules and learning how to write. So you could take a lot of those skill sets from TTRPGs and applying it into comics. And so that's where I essentially started to back away a little bit from TTRPGs and then transition over to my comics, which was this year.
I'm sorry, a little bit distraction. So you and TJ Storm, that's how you came with Snowstorm Comics together?
I knew Snowstorm Comics was going to be the name. Like when I first started thinking about how I wanted to do my company, I was just like, well, let me do something that incorporates me. I was like, my first name, I was like, I can't really do anything with that. But Snow, you could do a lot of things with Snow. So I was thinking maybe like Snowflakes originally. But then I was like, you know what? Snowstorm sounds a lot better. So I took that in and then launched with that. And so the beautiful thing about it was when I was coming up with this, I was telling my friends at New York Comic Con, you have to figure out what direction you want it to take. Like some artists or some people, they want to make money. You know, their primary goal is to make money within the comic book industry. Like they want to be able to thrive and feed, doing the stuff that they love. And you have to take a very particular path to do that direction. Versus me, I'm focusing at the beginning of getting our comic book content out there. I want people to be interested in Rise of the Nephilim, talking about the characters that's happening in the comic, become a fan of the characters themselves and the story. So for me, the creative control and the ability to be able to tell the story that I want to tell was most important. And with that direction, you have to take a entirely different road than someone whose primary focus is like to make money per se. I mean, you may have some interloping per se, but the lines of importance, the topics of importance is often very different depending upon the area that you want. So by allowing myself to make the money that it allowed me to have the full creative control to be like, I would have hired this artist here and this artist there to do variant covers for my comic. I would have tell this story And I would be able to buy these mini comics from the printing service to sell at whatever the case may be. So, and then, which is very different from if you're trying to, become very popular, because you're like, okay, now what really works in the field? What is successful in the field? You look at what comics are popular, and then often you try to incorporate that, and then put your own spin into it. So therefore, it gives you the greater chance for success. So forth and so on. So yeah, it was some great learning lessons that I have from there. But for us, for Snowstorm Comics, we wanted to make sure we had 3 priorities. One, as much creative control as we possibly had, a full representation of diversity that is often either considered, a tertiary part or temporary. Like they'll have a temporary focus on it until they think they got good enough individuals, and then they'll transition back to the status quo. So we wanted to make sure that it was a key backbone of our stories going forward. At 3, we wanted to make sure that it was as affordable as possible, and that's what really was one of the biggest compliments we kept receiving at both WonderCon and New York Comic Con. It's the fact that our comic, WonderCon, it was only $2.50. At New York Comic Con, because we had to go through a different printing service, sadly it went up to $4, but often that it was still a lot cheaper than many of the comics that were selling, which would normally sell for the same size between $12 to $20. So many people would come by, they were like, first of all, they would look at the stickers, see the stickers are for free. They'd be like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, can you tell me what the comic is about? So I tell them what the comic Rise of Nephilim is about. And I just tell them, like, the price here is only $4. And the amount of times people's eyes will widen after they hear that price point was shocking. And it was just like, sign me up. Like, that's less than a cup of Starbucks. I was like, well, yeah, that's the main goal. We want to make sure that it doesn't hurt anybody's pockets when they decide to pick up a comic. Now, of course, for the collectors out there, they're not as concerned about price point. They want more of that high quality limited edition aspect, And so we do have like variant editions. There are like limited edition versions done by specific artists where we make sure to get the highest quality paper, and we put it around the price point you normally see for variant covers, sometime between $13 to $15 on average. But we wanted still to make, again, since our priority was making sure our story was accessible and available for everyone who wanted to pick up, the standard edition has always been our driving force, and we want to make sure with all of the content that we come out going forward, we have our primary product be accessible and affordable enough for everyone who'd be interested to be able to pick up.
So why don't you introduce the comics that you got? I got like some of these pictures. Check it out.
Yep, that's Layla and Nico. This was done. Both of these actually was done by the fantastic Daily Art, who I actually met at San Diego Comic Con during a art and artist and writer meetup. But yeah, this comic is about a Rise of the Nephilim. I wanted to tell a story that was actually dedicated towards siblings, because I felt like siblings are not often seen within the media. If they're shown, they are either killed off within the first 3 to 5 minutes of the movie or TV that's out there, to give the main character, trauma and stuff like that to move on with their story, or they eventually end up as like sibling rivalries that you have to kill, like at the end of the series. You know what I mean? It's like, so they're always secondary pieces meant to be a driving factor for the protagonist, and almost never a focus on the interactions themselves. And so I was like, that's not realistic. Like, family dynamics is not just there to give you drama. Family dynamics is often a core piece of so many people's storyline, especially from different cultures out there. Like Western society is a lot more individualistic, But once you start to expand outside of that, you notice that family content is a much stronger and deeper aspect, and is wrapped within their storyline. So I wanted to incorporate that in this comic by providing a story of two siblings who are in a war between two opposing forces, and they have to fight their way through. You're going to find heartwarming moments as well as heart-wrenching moments as Layla has to look after her baby brother Nico, and which is very difficult. I mean, just it's very difficult to do just naturally if they were just chilling by themselves, let alone having to weave their way in the midst of a war between two incredibly powerful forces at the same time. So you get to see her struggle making right decisions, and then take a left turn and make a wrong decision to figure out what's the right way to do. And then you see Nico try to keep that innocence that is seen in the midst of the war. And that's another thing I wanted to try to portray in this content, because you probably noticed when it comes to Black children in the media, we are often seen as someone who has to grow up extremely fast because of very difficult experiences. So we're pretty much age 32 when we're 12 years old, or we're pretty much the very sarcastic, witty type that gives the fact, the comic relief to that. But like that innocence that associated with Black children is almost never there. We've always been written and shown as like, decades older than being 10 years old, you know what I mean? And perfect example, you can't think of one children that's treated like the awe moment that Moana came in. Moana 2, the new movies that's coming out.
Yeah.
How you have the younger sister that comes out, and everyone talks about that adorable younger sister as she reaches out like Moana. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we don't have that for Black kids. Like there's no Black kid that I can think of where you'd be like, oh, he's so sweet, protected with your life. I cannot think of one example of that. And so when I saw people coming by and they were looking at Nico, which by the way, they were the first stickers to actually get taken out. It was just like, he's so cute. I was like, sold. The assignment has been done correctly. So that's what I mean by wanting to try to provide stories that fills in a void that is normally not seen within the media in general, Western media in general. That is always and will be a main proponent of Snowstorm Comics, and clearly here it arrives in the Nephilim. So,
okay. So, like, what diversity they are? Are they Caucasian, or they just?
So I wanted Layla. She looks, because I can't get too much into the content itself because it gets into spoilers. But Layla is meant to be racially ambiguous. Some people would think she's Middle Eastern. Some people think she's Jewish. Some people think Italian, and that was kind of supposed to be like the primary focus on her. Versus Nico. Nico clearly is meant to have more of like a half Black, half something. Appearance to them, but definitely when you see him, you can tell right away, like, okay, he's.
Which one is Nico?
Oh, Nico's the little brother, the one that's holding the sword underneath.
I thought that was a little girl. Yeah.
Well, that was also the main thing, is I wanted to make sure that it crossed the line where you wasn't really sure what he was exactly, because a lot of times we try to pigeonhole people into like certain areas, like he has to look like this or she has to look like that. So I wanted to have Nico to have like that ambiguous appearances where you weren't 100% sure what he actually was until you actually start reading the comic. But yeah, that's often a very common misconception, which is good, because I wanted people to try to figure out exactly what's happening here. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that was the other thing we were trying to do, was when we were putting these two individuals together, I was trying to study how I could have two different phenotypes look like they are related. And the biggest way I was able to look at that was I was taking a look at like twins specifically, who had like half black, half white parents, and how the twins could look drastically, who could look like half black or half white, or like one twin would look mostly black, and the other twin would look mostly white. But when you look at them together, you can still kind of tell that they were related. So I took
Right.
those lessons that I learned from those sibling relationships and applied that here into this comic. And so because of that, people will see that they were just like they look, they look like siblings, but you could tell like they're, they have different phenotypes. And that's the reason why, is because I was taking those studies from that aspect. I was like, okay, I wanted to incorporate that into this story. So
Okay. What are they on a quest to find something, or
uh, okay.
you don't want to give too much on it, right? You know?
Yeah, like it's the first issue. The first issue by itself
All
hits
right.
hard.
All right. I'll move on. I'll move on. Don't worry about
no,
it.
no worries. What I wanted to say is, this was one of the biggest compliments we received at WonderCon when
Right.
a person came by and picked up the book. Media, he wanted to support different independent companies, and so he decided to pick up the book. And so we sold it to him. Not, had a great time with him, not thinking anything of it. He came back the following day on Sunday, and he was like, "Out of all the books that I've came across, I love this book so much that I wanted to buy." He essentially bought 14 copies of that book to give it out
Wow.
on his Patreon. He had a Patreon that, I guess, for him to like provide material, and for like proponents, for people who subscribe to the Patreon, he would give out like independent comics for people to take a look at. And so
Right.
he bought 14 of them for his Patreon. And so that was when I knew, like, okay, we're on the right track, because no longer is it just people looking at the front cover and is interested in it. It's people actually reading the story, enjoying the story, and then wanting to provide that for other people to be able to take a look. I was like, okay, we understood the assignment, and we're doing a good job along with it. So yeah, so that's the reason I wanted just to say that, as to,
Excuse me.
if I'm a bit reserved, I can say it just means the first issue, we go a bit hard, go a bit ham. So go ahead, take a look and check it out.
Yeah, yeah. But there's an artist that you got. She kind of caught my interest a bit. I was gonna. I reached out. I was trying to reach out. I just started reaching out to her today. I was reaching out to her today. I mean, like, yeah, she. I like her style of drawing.
Yes, she's a fantastic painter by the name of Tehani Farr. I came across her also at San Diego Comic Con, and the first thing that I noticed right away was that she was able, like, a lot of her art pieces featured people of color, and all different types and flavors. And I was just
Right.
like, okay, because I'll be honest and tell you, I can say that quite often you could come across artists who don't normally draw people of color. They normally just mostly draw, like, Caucasians. And so
Right.
when you attempt to hire them to do something for your content, you're just like, no, this doesn't look right. He looks white with a weirdly weird tone. So you it's a balancing act, and that's why going forward, when I came across that issue, I was like, I need to. Yeah, look at artists. I need to ask them for material. Showing them being able to do people of color, because a lot of artists, I can just tell you firsthand, when I went through my classes at CGMA, there was never a class that really went over like how to draw like people of color. It was always the default a white, per se, and that was my issue that I actually submitted to them. I was like, none of these classes here never really went over and try to show different representation, especially when it came to, like, I would assume it would be displayed in like the portrait painting class or or like the concept design class for character designs, I was expecting to run into that, and it
Right.
never occurred. Never occurred. So it made
Mm.
sense why many artists wasn't able to do it, because you're not taught that in those
Right.
classes.
Right.
So you had to take an extra effort if you're not, especially if you're not of that ethnicity, to try to learn how to do that to make sure it comes across correctly. But when I came across
Right.
her, immediately, that was the biggest thing, is she had this incredibly realistic design, of realistic with slash fantastical aspects to it, but primarily of people of color. So I started talking to her and try to understand her process, and we just hit it off. We have very similar vibes in some ways. I tell her that she's like a mix between me and Megan. Because me and Megan are kind of like two opposite ends of the pot. So you combine those two individuals together, and you pretty much have Tahani. But we hit it off right away, and I was like, let's go ahead, and I wanted her to do a cover for the variant edition of our second issue of Rise of the Nephilim, which I'm currently working on. I'm only a couple pages away, and then it should be coming out by the end of this year. So I reached out to her, hired her to do the art print, and she loved it because of the fact that it was one of the few times she actually got to draw children. She said she only has done one child image before ever. That's like, and she's been in the game for a very long time, yeah. And she's only she only was hired one other time to do a child image, and that was it. Other times it was adults. So because it was very different from her normal range of content that she draws, like I said, showcasing about family, showcasing about siblings, showcasing about the Nephilim. She was extremely interested about the Nephilim concept. For those who are familiar with biblical terms, you have a slight sneak peek of what this comic is about. It's kind of like our Easter egg. So she was very interested in that because she knew what the Nephilim was about, the sibling aspect, and all the other things that she normally doesn't get the chance to draw. Drew her to this cover, and so she completed it. That's a different one. That's actually done by a different artist who reached out to San Diego Comic-Con. Okay. But hers was the one that has the red and blue background.
Is this it?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, that's hers. So she completed that, as you can see, in a wonderful art piece. So much detail that is into it. Like, it gives this ethereal aspect that really shows like the different dynamics associated with the Nephilim and how they come together. Like I said, you can, especially those who are familiar with the Nephilim, you can see all the aspects of the Nephilim applied in this art piece. And so we sold it as posters originally at New York Comic-Con, and for limited time only. And we do have some left remaining on our website, but again, these are limited time. They're not going to be continued to be repeat. After those are gone, they're gone. And then there's going to be a variant cover for one of the variant covers that we're going to have for our second issue, which will be coming out either by December or the latest January time. Again, I only have a couple pieces of pages left, and then they'll be released. But yeah, so she was actually at our booth at New York Comic-Con as well every day.
Yeah.
We got to talk, have a great time. That was our first time really getting to hang out together, and we just vibe really well. And as you can imagine, we will be working together quite often going forward as the Rise of Nephilim series continues.
Well, I got some clips of you and her. I could play it. Okay. So check it out.
Hello. I am Jeffrey Stone here in New York Comic-Con, Snowstorm Comics, booth 2047, here with our debut comic, Rise of the Nephilim.
only $4.50.
That's a pretty cheap price. Wait, I had to stop you right there, man. You know, because
Sorry, only $4 actually.
Yeah, you walk around New York Comic Con and you're like $20. And you're like, oh, okay.
No, we want to make sure we had our comic as accessible as possible. So we have our standard edition right here for you to check it out. It's just $4. However, if you're a collector, you want like a limited edition version, we have that covered here too. And this here is our variant edition. There's only 210 copies left remaining with the highest quality paper we can find for $14.
I'm gonna stop you again because that looks like something out of a D&D type of thing.
Oh yes, this is definitely D&D influence. So for our TTRPG fans out there, you're definitely finding hints. Also, if you know a little bit about the Nephilim, you'll know a little bit what the story is about. Of course, we also got free stickers as well, so come by and go ahead and get something for free. And then any other thing that's available here at the booth.
Dude, I see she's signing this. It looks beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, so
this is Tehani Farr. She is the artist behind this design here. She is signing 3 different versions of this art print. This is also going to be on the variant cover for our second issue that will be coming out at the end of the year. She's going to be here every day from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock p.m.
Nice.
So yeah, so if you're interested to get something signed, make sure to come by around that time and we got you covered.
Yeah. Was that okay? Oh,
yes, that
because
was perfect.
my tablet was seemed kind of slow. That's why I asked.
No worries. Yeah, it came by perfectly smooth on my end. So yeah, that was I came across the Benton Apple. He actually reached out to me on Instagram. And he wanted to broadcast different independent publishers that was going to New York Comic Con. I think he saw the image by Tehani, reached out to us and said, "Hey, did you want to do like an interview to talk about content that you're preparing for New York Comic Con?" So I was like, perfect, you know. So we actually with something similar to this using StreamYards, and it was like 6 people in the same interview process talking about what we were planning on doing at New York Comic Con. And then he came by, I want to say either Friday or Saturday, interviewed us, you know, asking about the content. And yeah, you know, he gave me some pointers specifically about New York, saying how New York is it's very different from California. If y'all have never been in California, we are two opposite.
Yeah, New York is expensive. New York is very expensive.
Yes. I think both sides are very expensive in multiple ways, but it's also like the people are very different. Like I remember walking with my friend Megan, and we were about to walk across the street to head to the convention center, and we saw a lady do like a small like she bumped and she did a rear end into a person in front of her. We heard it. We heard the smash. We looked out. The lady stepped out the door, looked at the damage, I guess, that was going to be at the bumper, talked to the person, and then I guess they agreed not to do anything, and they just drove off. I was like, are you serious? I was like, it took no more than like maybe like 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half for all of that to be resolved. And I was in complete shock. I was just like, no, this would never happen in California. In California, you would have to pull over. You have a solid 30 minutes of getting information exchange. You would get a police will come by and be like, hey, what exactly happened, and write everything up, like almost like it was an accident, even though it was barely anything there. She was just like, New Yorkers don't have time for that. Like if we can still drive with that dent, then you know we're perfectly fine. We got nothing to worry about. I was just like, this is wild. This is crazy. So yeah, it was so different. Like the cultural differences between California and New York is mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. So for New Yorkers, I would definitely recommend checking out California because we're so different. I mean, it's a lot more chilled and a lot more laid back. And then Californians, if you ever want to feel what like the hustle and bustle is like and the liveliness aspect to it, head over to New York. Now, I mean, like LA, of course, has the hustle bustle as well, but even that is still it's a more like chill, laid back type aspect. You know what I mean? It's so interesting how two American cities could be so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many similarities, but they're so different at the same time. It's just awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. So like how many pages it's in the that you have in the comic, in the graphic novel.
So the comic, so just to clarify, it's just the first issue. It's like a floppy, so it's around like 23 pages. We try to put it around that area per se, just because we will be eventually releasing it as a graphic novel after we complete probably around 4 or 5 issues. But yeah, in the meantime, we just wanted to have the floppies available because we know, the floppies are usually the basis behind a comic book. Now, of course, many people like to have like the graphic novel aspect where you have the complete story, but we like to be continued. There's nothing more fun with playing with the reader with it, where you have the hook like what's going to happen next. You know what I mean? With a graphic novel, you don't normally get that because you have a complete story, but we have that to be continued, to be like tune in next week.
Cliffhanger.
That cliffhanger. Yeah, that's something that you can do with floppies that you can't really do as much with a graphic novel. So
is that like the only story that you did so far, or you have other stories like in works?
Oh yes, there's so this is the first comic, the first series we have in works, because we knew as popular as fantasy is, it doesn't reach everyone's flavor. You know what I mean? Usually often you can see some things that are lapping, but often folks who like fantasy don't like, say, sci-fi, or vice versa.
Right.
People who are interested in sci-fi don't like fantasy, or like superhero comics. That a lot of times people would just like superhero comics. They don't touch any of the other areas besides superhero comics. So our main goal was to make sure we expanded into different genres to cover everyone's taste. So there is a second series. This is actually one of the first art prints that we have here. Her name is Demario. She was actually, I met her at WonderCon, and we hired her to do some of the do our art pieces because we just created our website.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have some content available in our gallery. And one of the key roles we wanted to do was to have our story displayed in different art styles, so you will always find something in your taste. So, as you can see, her aspect is a bit more like Disney-esque. And then we have this person here named Rachel Huey, a fantastic artist who did not only this, but also the 3 stickers that, went away by Saturday of New York Comic Con. We didn't even make it to Sunday. And you see it has a more manga-esque approach to it. Called
I noticed it. Yeah.
And so our main goal is to try to provide a lot of our content, not just this comic book series, but most of our content going forward in different art styles. So even if the comic itself, even if you don't like say my art style leads more towards like Tahani Far, where it's a bit more realistic. But if you don't like that type of art style, you could be able to pick up the Disney version or the manga version or the heavily stylized version or traditional comic book art version, and to be able to pick it up and go forward. Like, for example, in the near future, we're reaching out with an artist whose art style is very similar to My Hero Academia. And so I when I saw that art style, it's because My Hero Academia also has a very unique manga-ish art style, very different than even what Rachel Huey's has. So when I reached out to him, I was like, hey, let's see if we can get this process started. So you most likely will see that actually coming up and be shown in our website by the latest early next year. So but yeah, that's another thing that I always recommended for people to get started upon, is figure out how to be able to branch out into different areas. And yeah, and that's how I came across many of these artists.
Okay. What for you to do the series, what was your inspiration? Just like writing a story and doing the artwork and stuff.
So the inspiration was associated with the unique mixture of light and darkness. It's
Okay.
usually when it comes to stories out there, usually is either one side of the spectrum or the other. Originally we started off with like everything being like light and holy and the portrayal of goodness, and then the 90s hit and we ended up with the oversaturation of darkness and everyone being edge lords and all that kind of stuff, and so there was a primary focus on darkness. And so slowly we're starting to see it sprinkle in of this idea of balance between the two, but we still are primarily in, I call it the dark phase. Like most people still like the bad boy aspect and all that kind of stuff. The Spike. I remember having a conversation at San Diego Comic-Con with a lady of like, what was the fascination with Spike? Because I didn't really get it because he just seemed like a complete douche. And I could go, that's another 30-minute conversation.
Spike the vampire?
Yeah, Spike the vampire.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I was just like, why did so many people, like this dude is clearly not healthy. I mean, he induces trauma at all levels, and yet so many people love this dude. And I'm just
I think people kind of relate to him because he just don't care. Like he used to be a loser before he was a vampire. And so I don't know. It's like when he turned the way he turned, he just kind of like indulged in evil a bit. But then then somewhere down the line he became good, and he was trying to like work on trying to be a good guy and all that stuff because he got influenced a little bit by Buffy.
So he made a little bit of progress, and then he'll make like 2 steps forward and then 5 steps back. And he's just like, man, we went down this road before. How do you make the same mistake from last season? It was very interesting coming across that, and I still feel like that archetype is still something that's very popular today, but it slowly is moving away because it's like when they're trying, because a lot of times people try to find that in real life, which would end up being bad for relationships, and so they're just like, I don't like this anymore. And so my goal was to try to see like what happens when someone has both. When you have both light and darkness inside of you, which sides wins? How do you keep both in check? Like, do you try to keep both in check? So that is something, and then we have that in future. Like, how does that play with your personality? And so it's so much that I want to say that I can't say because it's only the first issue that I would definitely go back upon when we get later on to the series about where it comes in. But I really wanted to play with the idea of people having both light and darkness inside of them and how they manage both of them, surrounded by all of the other circumstances that is going on at the same time. And then of course going back to the whole sibling dynamic, the representational dynamic, and then I wanted to definitely aim towards fantasy because I felt like that was where some of my strongest ties from. Like, I'll be honest, Lord of the Rings was probably one of the biggest imprints on my life because it actually got me to start reading. I remember when the first movie came out, Lord of the Rings, it was my first time seeing a movie that ended in a to be continued. And I was like, what? I was like, no, wait, I need to know what's happening next. Like, you can't just.
And it's a long movie too.
Yes, it was.
So that's like three hours, like three and change.
Yeah, 3 and change. Yep.
Yeah.
3 and change, and you're still.
I don't even think I sat. I don't even think I sat Like I never really seen it in theaters. I seen it on TV, and I'm
Mm.
not gonna lie. I mean, there's some scenes I enjoy, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I've seen the whole entire movie like that. Like, because there'll be have commercial breaks, and then I'll be turning the channel and
Oh,
stuff like that. And yeah.
yeah, that
So
makes it
I'm like,
worse.
wow.
That
But
makes it
yeah,
worse because you
I
had to
could
deal
see
with
that.
commercials.
Yeah,
Like, you, you
right,
had it. I mean, at least in the movie theater, it was a straight shot all the way through. You had to worry about like HGTV and
right.
Carl's Jr. and everything else popping in the meantime as Gandalf is trying to talk and tell you about
Yeah,
cheeseburgers. You know, so so, so yeah,
right,
that is very rough.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not. But yeah, I that was the thing about it is I was even though it was like 3 hours and some change at the movie theater, it didn't feel like 3 hours at all. I remember walking outside, I was like, oh, it's complete darkness right now. And so because of that, when I got finished, I was like, no, I need to know what happens in this story. So I started reading for the first time, and I picked up, my dad was shot. Then I was like asking for
Mm,
novels to read. So I was just like, yeah, I want to read The Two Towers. And I was just in my bedroom, just reading this book for the first time. And the language, the language, fam. It was complicated, especially for my preteen self. But I read through The Two Towers and Return of the King by the time the Two Towers came out. So I kind of already knew what was
mm,
happening. And I was kind of curious to see what they were going to change because I realized some things in the book was different from the movie, and I didn't know it was going to be that way. But it was really that got my passion and interest into fantasy. And I have,
mm.
especially with my D&D influence, I felt like one of my strongest genres that I could write and draw content from is the fantasy area. So yeah, I did that, and after that, I was like, okay, well, my first series, I wanted to make sure that it was a series that I felt passionate about, but it wasn't going to be like vital that it needed to be a multi-million-dollar hit. So because of that, I was like, well, let me start off with something that I'm familiar with, but still something that I'm passionate about, and that's where Rise of the Nephilim came in.
Mm.
Hmm.
Okay. Wow. So what's like what's the future like for the series and well, not just the series but Snowstorm Comics. Um, it's Snowstorm Comics. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, what's like? You see like animated movies
Oh yes.
or
Oh
yeah.
yes. Oh yes. I always tell folks like expect to see me in Fortune 500 within the next 5 to 10 years, and that's something I try to keep in my brain. I try to tell folks like, what are the so I kind of mentioned about one of the biggest experience that I had at a WonderCon was a person purchasing 14 comics. The
Yeah.
second biggest experience, well, another one of the biggest experience that I had was I remember, a brother came up to the table and he had this big old smile on his face. I never even knew the guy, and he was like, how it was inspiring to see someone like you first time here in a convention, because with you
Mm,
being here, that means I can make it. And so I never thought I would be an inspiration for someone else, because I was always on the opposite side of the fence looking up at people,
right.
like as they said, standing on the shoulders of giant. That was me last year and the previous years before. And now this year, I was able to be an inspiration for others. So that's one of the big things that I wanted to do going forward for Snowstorm Comics, is to help be that guiding light for people wanting to get themselves into the field, who was like, okay, well, what direction should I take? What questions, like, what was your issues that you run into, especially since you say you're the Rock Lee of the comic book world? Like, what problems did you run into? And I like I said, one of the best things about New York Comic Con was just talking about that. So that's one of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward. I even said I might even write a book to discuss about all the problems that I had, so therefore they don't make the same mistake. Because originally I'm just an artist or writer. I had very little idea about running my own business, and so I had to learn about a lot of things on the side to get this up and running. And then secondly, we're gonna be having quite a few new series coming up in the near future. Our next genre that we'll be tapping into is sci-fi.
Okay.
You'll be the first person that actually gets this sneak peek, because I actually have not talked about this online with anyone else. The only person that is aware of the project are the people who've been working on the project behind the scenes. But I say the best way to describe it is if you combine Jason Bourne, Game of Thrones, and Halo together. That's how you describe the comic. You're like, those are three very different ideas, but when you see the comic comes out, you're just like, okay, I see exactly where this is coming from.
I wasn't too big on Jason Bourne. I didn't play the Halo comic, the Halo video games, and
all three sections.
I think I seen one Jason Bourne movie, and I just wasn't really like, because when it came out, it was almost like John Wick a bit, but I'd rather watch John Wick than Jason Bourne, because it's like, and I don't mean to get racial, but it's always the white guy. He knows how to kill people, and then he goes through some trauma, and yeah. But John Wick, I mean, he got varieties of people,
That's true.
After people after him and all that stuff. But I don't even watch John Wick like that. Like, I'm not so crazy about John Wick, but I'll rather watch a John Wick flick than a Jason Bourne. I just seen one Jason Bourne flick in the theaters, and that was it. Like, I'm like,
that's enough for me.
Yeah.
I feel you for that. And so to clarify, when I'm referring to Jason Bourne, it's not like I'll just be able to tell you, it's definitely not a white protagonist, white male protagonist, as like Jason Bourne, who's running the series. No, it's definitely is more ensemble. It's more of an ensemble piece. And as you can imagine, when I say one of our three pillars moving forward is diversity, that ensemble is definitely filled with people of color of all different types. And so we definitely don't have to worry about that in any of our comics, let alone this one coming up. The Jason Bourne aspect was more associated, again, slight sneak peek. You know how Jason Bourne was really politically savvy? Like, it has like a lot of underneath the scenes of like governmental issues going on and government agents and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that part, you will likely see a lot of that aspect in the upcoming comic.
So it's more like politics, if you would say, like
there's definitely some political drives to it.
Okay.
You know what? I'll just give a little bit of sneak peek. No, I can't, because the first issue doesn't even talk about what fully happens yet. Yeah, so I would just say there's it has.
How about this? I'll stay tuned. Stay tuned to I don't want you to blow. I don't want to blow up your ideas and all that stuff. So I get it, because it's not just you. It's a lot of people I've talked to. Like, they'll just give you like a little portion with certain things about. Some don't even want to give it out like that. But I get it. I get it.
Especially because it's so early in the foundation. That's why I love these interviews that start us off at the beginning, because we get to talk about like our journey of getting here. But I can't wait to have interviews after these series has been released and there's like 5 to 10 issues out, because then I can just go ham and talk about like everything that's going on in the story without having to worry about like, can I really talk about this? Because again, I'm ADHD. I'll be honest, I'm not medicated today. I am so often very have a lot of problems just dropping secrets and spoilers in the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? Because the filter gate is open and I'm just like, oh yeah, this happened and that happened. I was like, oh, maybe I should not talk about that. Oh well, too late. So
but I could talk to a different subject a little bit. I wanted to touch a little bit on the HD 80. Excuse me if I'm butchering that. But what you was 88 HD. Yeah, like so you said like during your life, you said when you would like work on stuff, you would stop like and then like you would go back, you would go to the next thing and then you discovered it through a therapist.
No. So what had happened was ever since I don't think when I was a kid, I think it started as a teenager.
Okay.
People would start saying like, hey, have you ever got like checked out for ADHD? And I was like, what? I was like, nah. I was like, that can't be right, because my mom is a nurse and my dad is a social worker. So I was like, one of them would have told me if I had ADHD. So I was like, that could be nothing of it, right? So I was thinking maybe it was just like a couple one-timer deal, especially at that time frame, because mental health was often looked down upon. This was back where they used to use the R word a lot more frequently.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
When that was happening, I was like, I think I was like a teenager, probably like 14, about 14, 15.
How old are you now?
Yeah, I keep that as a secret. I keep that in wraps. I keep that in wraps. Because people get surprised. I like people to guess. But no, I would say they have, when I was going through the Navy, and then many military individuals started asking the question. I was like, okay, this isn't just schooling, but people from when I was at boot camp to A school to even when I was like, going to, because I went overseas to Japan, stayed in Japan for a while, lived there for a bit, was asking me these questions. And I was like, are they just trying to, I thought they were trying to roast me. That's what I was thinking. They were just like, oh, okay, they're probably just trying to talk smack. That's because I'm like hyper and happy and all that kind of stuff. They're just trying to do a dig at me. And so, but then the progress continued. The same story continued even to after I got out. I didn't know that I was trying to cope with it in different ways. For example, a key aspect that I was doing is that I would, if I needed to like study at college or something, I would need to go to Starbucks every day and drink like a caramel frappuccino or something like that, something that was highly caffeinated. And then that was what allowed me to stay focused in that area. What I was unaware of was I was actually doing outside steps to affect my ADHD that medication, stuff like that does. For example, ADHD medication is a stimulant. People don't tell you it's really just is a stimulant like caffeine is. So a lot of ADHD folks, they would just drink like something that's highly caffeinated. They give them like a low tier version of say what a Ritalin or a Concerta would do. And then when you put yourself in like an area like Starbucks or a cafe, you're keeping yourself isolated from distractions. That is often much more difficult when you're staying at home. Like when you're at home, you have so many things around you that you can start working on it for like 10 to 15 minutes. You'd be like, you know what, let me start playing video games. Or let me go ahead and start doing that. Because we're very focused ADHD is all about like focusing on what's interesting to you and that dopamine hit. So if something else takes your mind onto something, you're just like, oh, squirrel, that whole squirrel aspect. Oh, that is true to life. that is definitely true to life. And the defining factor, what made this concrete, was it anything else? I mean, I kind of thought something was up with so many people saying this, especially as I started working as an engineer. But the turning point was when I went to a physical checkup, get my physical checkup at a doctor, and he saw me like I would kick, what I thought was normal behavior, but was clearly ADHD. I'll be swinging my legs back and forth. I'll start drumming on like the tables and stuff like that, like constantly moving and jittering and all that kind of stuff. And he was just like, hey, so by the way, it was toward the end of my physical checkup. He said, by the way, have you ever got checked up for ADHD? And then that's when I paused. I was like, oh, this is a doctor. This isn't just like friends tossing jokes or what I was assuming, just people just like say things just because to say things. Like this is a medical physician putting me down this path, which means if all these people are saying it and then a doctor is saying it, there must be something there. And so I was just like, I told him no. He was like, okay, well, I'm going to refer you to a therapist to just check and see, because there's he started asking me a couple questions. He said there's a lot of traits that you showcase within ADHD that we just want to get checked up on. And I was like, okay, think nothing of it. And then as I said it, I got my first therapist, and it took no more than 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes of like, man, I think maybe like 4 or 5 questions. That's all it took. And he was just like, oh yes, you are a case study. You are if you was to look up ADHD in example in the dictionary, your face should be there essentially. So I was like, oh, interesting. So I'll be honest to tell you, I was glad that was the case, but there was a lot of things I had to unpack about that, because I had to figure out like why my mom and my dad didn't tell me about this. I talked to my mom about it, but I won't go into that circumstance. It was just very unique, the answer, and I even approached my dad about it. But it's just also within the Black community, I think mental health issues like that is constantly pushed down upon, which is bad, because then we have to use secondary means to try to cover something that's clearly an issue there. So it needs to be.
How did you get past it though? I'm sorry, but like, how did you get past it with just getting to your goals?
I'll be honest, fam. It was the medication. I remember the first time I took at that time they started me off with Ritalin, and I remember taking it for the first time, and then it was like everyone would tell you it's the same sensation of like you didn't know, but it feels like this cloud just suddenly erases from in front of you and everything enters in focus. And the first key difference, which I was in shock, is ADHD. A lot of times when we like look at stuff, we'll like glance at things to try to figure out what something is there, but then we'll move on. We never they struggle to read through something unless we are very interested in that topic. Like Lord of the Rings, I was super interested in it, so I was able to stay focused on the entire book. But if it doesn't have that dopamine hit, then it's very difficult for me to focus. And the minute I took Ritalin, I was able to start looking at emails and read through every single word and every single line in that email. And I was like, oh, wow. Is this what being normal is like? And that is the same as so many people I talk to with ADHD. When they first take that medicine, they're just like, that's usually the same thing. Like, oh, so this is what it's like to be normal. You don't have like executive dysfunction where you have like one of the biggest issues is you have like 5 different things you need to work on. And so because you have so many things you need to work on, you're not able to make the decision of what you want to work on. So you just stand there and not do anything and self-sabotage yourself. When you take the medication, you're just like, okay, let's attack it. And then you just slowly chop away at the task at hand until it's completed, and then you move on to the next one. So it's mind-boggling. Like and I've been on it for years now. And I remember when I was with my roommate at a time, and I took it, and I was just like, wow. Even at this day, now I'm on Concerta, because Concerta works with my system a lot better than Ritalin does. Ritalin, it was like giving me like heart palpitations, and it removed my appetite like drastically. But Concerta works better for me, works longer for me, and I'm able to eat. And so, but still to this day, like the minute I will pop it in, and I would just sit there, and it's just in awe how things just starts to focus within 10 to 30 seconds. You're just like, it's insane. And you get the enjoyment of feel like it was being normal for between 8 to 12 hours. And then you come back down, and you're back to ADHD mode. So yes, that really is what helped made me to stay focused. I never stayed on a series as long as I did with Rise of the Nephilim. Usually a series I would last on maybe like 3-4 months, and then that's pretty much it. Like I've been on this thing now for I started on, it's been like a year and a couple of months. So it's a major thing. So I would definitely recommend anyone who's been asked about ADHD. It may seem like a joke. I think it's given the proper respect now than it was in the earlier years, but especially among us in the Black community, we know how people often look at like mental health issues. So you have to push that aside and do what is most important for you. So if you feel like you can get, I would definitely recommend at least get diagnosed to check and see if you have it. And then if you do have it, there's different ways of approaching it. Some people try to do external factors and don't go through medication. Other people like me go through medication. So but at least knowing what you have, you can then start making steps to address that to give you the best possible chance in life.
Yeah, and So you just like so you take medication mostly for this symptom that you have?
Oh yes. Normally how I do it is like Monday through Friday I take my regular dosage. Saturday I take like a light dosage. And then Saturday is usually my non-dose day where I'm just going to chill and just relax. The classic 7-day I rest type ordeal, And so therefore, I'm not on it all the time, because even with Concerta, I could still like, while I stay focused, my appetite may disappear just depending upon. Most often it doesn't, but occasionally it can. So I was just like, let me just get one day where I'm just not on the medication at all, and I could just chill. So this is Sunday today where we're recording, so that's the reason why you're getting 50% by ADHD, because the Concerta still kind of stays in your system a little bit, even if you don't take it that day. But it's definitely aspects to it. That's for
Do
sure.
you think you'll stop? Or because I remember I was taking like medication, but it's like antidepressant. This was when I was like in my teens, and like there were times where I'll get used to the medication to a point where I would kind of I wouldn't feel too good, and then I don't know, for some reason I just stopped altogether. So I don't know.
Well, for ADHD, no, I can't see myself like stopping the medication just because it helps the focus. I think it's a bit, and that's the thing as well. I think it's largely dependent upon the mental health issue you're tackling with. Like
I got you.
Anxiety you may be able to play around with and not have to deal with medication after a certain point. Mental health, depression, those aspects. I think you could be able to try to work and possibly be able to work around with. But because ADHD is not associated with like emotional aspects, but more cognitive, that's the reason why. It's just like, well, if I do if I do leave it, I know the downsides associated with it.
Gotcha.
Which means, yeah, I wouldn't be able to perform the way I would need to. So yeah, it just is what it is. Everyone is different, and if this wasn't my passion, if I wasn't planning on doing comics and I wasn't trying to become a Fortune 500 company, yeah, then I probably wouldn't be. I probably would be on it because I would just be, chilling, playing video games or something like that. But with these goals that I have in place and this drive that I have and this passion that I have, the ADHD makes it extremely difficult. I'd say it puts this path into like, Halo legendary difficulty. Oh, you say you haven't played it? Never mind. I was gonna say if you play Halo, there's like there's hard and then there's legendary difficulty. Having ADHD with these goals puts you in like a legendary difficulty path. It's very difficult, but the Concerta helps brings it to where it's at least hard mode and is not at the hardest mode possible. So that's the thing.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man. And best wishes to you. I'll stay tuned to the snowstorm. I might order this comic the Nephilim. What's the name of it? Rise of the Nephilim.
Rise of the Nephilim. Yes.
Nephilim. Sorry.
No problem. So just as a heads up, so as mentioned,
what is the Nephilim? Like, if you don't mind, like real quick, like if you can tell me.
So the Nephilim technically comes from the Bible.
Did you just talk about that? Did you just talk about that before?
Not the Bible aspect, no. I
talked
about light and darkness, but that's why I said the title out there is a Easter egg. Because if you're familiar with, if you've read the Bible a little bit and are from, especially Genesis, then you would be aware of what the Nephilim is about in the book and what their core concept is, which then gives you a hint. You have the biggest hint out of anyone as to what the story is going to be about. Now, of course, you can pretty much just Google it as well. I mean, if you just
I'll Google it. I'll Google it.
You don't have to read. You don't have to read through all of Genesis to give you a hint.
I got you. I got you.
But yeah, that's that Easter egg. Now, I will say, as mentioned, again, thank you again, New York Comic Con, for the support, because we sold out on the standard edition, but because of that, we're still waiting for our, we're going for our second printing. So the $4 version is sold out, but we do have our varied edition available, which is our limited edition version, and that one is $14. But that's, of course, on our highest quality paper, and there's only 190 copies left remaining out of 500. If you were to wait for the more affordable version, that one should be hopefully back in stores by December. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on our Instagram, which is Snowstorm Comics, or our website, to be able to see when the standard edition is back in store. But again, if you're a collector and you want something, that something that's not going to last much longer, you could be able to find that in our store as well.
Well, thank you again, man. I really appreciate you giving me your time and and sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate this. You're a great person, and I appreciate you taking the time to bring me on board. Again, I always am a big fan of people trying to find stuff out there. So again, thank you so much for having me on this channel, and it was awesome. Great time.
No doubt. Let's do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, folks. That's a wrap. Get that like button, and I'm gonna put the description, Snowstorm, the website there, and yeah, thank you for watching.
Have a great day, everyone.